So let me tell you a very, very quick story, and I want you to be quiet. I want you to sit down. This is very interesting. So this guy, I meet him early this year because we're part of this $25,000 mastermind, which is really a good deal. And so I meet him there, and then it just so happens that he becomes involved in ASM indirectly because he basically comes on as CEO of this new business who were one of the top affiliates for ASM last time. So he just finds himself out in this place called the Cayman Islands, which we were at a few weeks ago for like top affiliates of ASM. They were gracious. They flew us out there, and we strategized for a couple days. It was really nice. So I start talking to this gentleman, and he starts telling me things about wealth, okay? And I think I know some stuff about wealth. I'm very good at acquiring wealth, right? But the word is acquiring it. If we focus too much of our time on making money, we are not really building something solid. Because I know a lot of guys who make a lot of money, and at the end of the day, my bank account is usually still bigger than their bank account, right? So it's about using money effectively. It's about leveraging your assets correctly. Now, in an information marketing business, it doesn't really matter too much. There's not a lot of complexities. It's a really pretty simple business model at the end of the day, right? So there's not a lot of leverage, there's not a lot of concern. But in a physical product business, it's very possible, by the way, and you'll meet some of these people here at ASM where I'm doing $150,000 a month. And you're like, awesome. Yeah, check out my screenshot, right? And then you get to talk to them and they're like, yeah, but I'm spending $175,000 a month, right? But I'll make it up in volume, right? It's not what you make, it's what you keep. Now this next guy, I really, really like it. I like him for one really good reason, because he's everything my financial planner is not, okay? So I'm sitting down with my financial planner one day recently, and I'm actually going to mention him again in my main ASM talk, and I say to him, I say two things. I say, first thing, I go, I make more money than you do, and you're my financial planner. What's wrong with that, right? It's just an observation. Now, what can you do for me to help me put my assets correctly? And I said, here's the second problem that I have with you. And so I'm really trying to make him earn his keep, right? I said, here's my second problem. Every time I interact with you, I have to give you money. Right? Hey, put something in a 401k, which I can't do anymore, right? It's like, hey, let me put you with after-tax dollars into this investment. Awesome! So I paid 50% taxes, and now I'm going to pay 20% capital gains taxes on top of this money that's already post-tax. Every time I interact with my CPA, my financial planner, my so-called wealth guys, right, it always takes money out of my bank account. Now, 50 years from now, theoretically, supposedly, this will all be better for me, right? I don't know, man. I don't even know if I'm going to live that long, right? So how do you really handle wealth? How do you manage it? And with the ASM business, with so many different moving parts, so many different things coming in, it's easy to let the bottom fall out. In information marketing, if any money comes in, we probably make a profit. But on Amazon, there's a lot of complexities involved. So this next guest, here's one of the reasons why I like him, is he's an active wealth guy, not a defensive wealth guy, which is what every financial planner, every financial person that you ever will see, that's what they focus on, okay? The second thing is, this is a guy who got kicked off. Was it NBC? CNBC. He got kicked off because he had the audacity to challenge the sacred 401k. I felt like an idiot after talking to him. I'm like, why do I ever put money in a 401k? Well, because my financial advisor told me to, right? This guy is contrarian to the max, just like I'm contrarian to the max in my business, which is what I really appreciate it. He wrote a national best-selling book called Killing Sacred Cows. I don't know if any of you have read it or heard about it. He's going to be speaking on the main stage Friday. I meet with him 2 days ago. He's supposed to go home. He hasn't been home since Cayman. I somehow convince him not to go home and speak for you here today because I think the message is so important. Some of the stuff that he's focusing on is stuff I'm going to be implementing directly in my business, because here's the deal. If he saves me $4,000 a month without doing anything, that's better than me making an extra $10,000 or $15,000 a month, right? And we're on a pretty tight operation, so the stuff that he can do for you, I think, can save you even more. And it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep at the end of the day. So with that said, check this out. arrettGunders0n, let's welcome him to the stage.
Thanks, man. So I know what you guys are thinking. I am to finance what Jason is to business. When you think of a CEO, you really think of Jason in your mind, right? More like a painter. Yeah, well, it's time for finance to be disrupted a little bit. It's time for the new rules to come out, especially for business owners, because you're business owners in this room, and I'm going to tell you, the rest of people that are not involved in business are going to get hurt badly in the next 10 years. Because I know you've been given the advice before that if you just save and sacrifice and delay and defer, and if you just tighten your belt, and if you just set money aside and entrust it to your broker, and they're called a broker, why? Because they're broker than you. You just entrust it to them, and if you just don't touch it. Have you guys ever seen that Fidelity commercial with the green line? I mean, it feels really communistic to me because it's like, just walk the green line because we know better about your life than you. And then this guy comes across this like amazing collector's car, and it's like the music plays, he lights up, he's so excited, and then the lady walks out and wags her finger like, can't buy that, got to keep walking the green line so that one day when you're old and decrepit, you can live on a beach for 1 week before you die and pass your money on to your heirs. You know? It's like, crap. Look, it's totally different for business owners, the world of investing and the definition of investing. Because it's not about handing your money over to companies and mutual funds that you don't even know what's going on in their boardroom. You don't have any control over the outcome. And I got to tell you, we would have a revolution in this country if just one thing happened. If instead of them automatically taking the fees out of everyone's accounts, if you actually had to write a check every time a fee came about, because there's so many damn hidden fees. 401ks were under attack because they found that 13.3% was a fee inside of one of the plans. 60 Minutes did an expose. Time Magazine did an expose on why it's time to retire the 401k. Hey, what I thought was cool is I came out with the 401k hoax way before they were talking about this stuff. And yeah, CNBC, the reason they didn't bring me back on is they said, oh, we're bringing out our outside financial network. arrettGunders0n, why don't you tell us about the stock market and what you think about it? I'm like, I don't think much about it. I don't think people should put their money in it. And instead, they should invest in a business or in themselves because that's where the real wealth is made. And then I think the British guy's eyes got really big, and then they cut to commercial really fast. And they didn't invite me back on. They did not. But they should have known what they're getting into. I was on Neil Cavuto just before that. Anyone watch Neil Cavuto, Fox News? You know, I was on with him, and we had a little bit of a disagreement. He said that it's mindless to put money into a retirement plan, and that it should be onerous to get to your money, and that, you know, hey, if someone's matching it, that's free money. You got to take it, right? And I was like, hell, isn't that the reason we're in the financial calamity we're in as a nation, that we're just going to hand our lives over to someone else and they're going to run it better than we do? Absolutely not. Instead, you guys have this opportunity to build something that you have influence over, that you have some passion around, that you have purpose. You're investing in your education right now so that you can produce more value in the economy. And if you want to make more money, then you create more value. And so as you go through today, as you go through ASM, it's about how do you deliver more value by selling products to people like me that once I had my Amazon Prime membership, a lot of my money just goes out the door and boxes show up every single day, right? And it's a great thing. I don't have to go anywhere. It just shows up. And I think it's fantastic, you know? It's efficient. But for those people that are going to set their money aside and hope that it works out in the stock market, I think that there's a pretty big surprise in store for them. I started in the financial services in June of 1998. And I decided just 3 weeks ago to do a little study on what has the market done, adjusted for inflation, from the time that I began in the industry. And anyone know what the market's supposed to average? Anyone have a number in their mind? Or 8% or 9%, right, 8% or 9% since 2000 BC, right? That's the averages. You know, the problem with averages is it's like, what if I got in the shower today and there were two shower heads and I turned one on freezing cold and I turned the other one scalding hot? On average, I'm at a lukewarm temperature, but in reality, I'm miserable as hell because averages don't matter. They don't take into account a whole lot of things. One thing they don't take into account for is fees. Remember when I said we'd have a revolution if we had to just write a check? At least in the old days, when people robbed you, they showed up in like stagecoaches and and that kind of stuff. Now it just automatically comes out of your account. And you can keep a lot more of that money instead of giving it to Uncle Sam or instead of giving it to Wall Street, and instead invest in something that can create cash flow for you more immediately. And so there's a few points I want to make today. One is that economic independence is absolutely available for you within 3 to 7 years. And I know that what you've been taught is that compound interest takes 30 years to bake. And if you set your money aside for 30 years, then you can have economic independence too. But the stats are pretty staggering. You know what the real percentage of economic independence is at age 65 right now? Best stat I could find is that 8% of people are economically independent. And this is what that means. They could stop working and have their investments create enough income that they would be able to continue to sustain life, right? 98% is the worst statistic I found as far as the failure rate, that 98% of people at age 65 couldn't even do that. So what I'm telling you is that the system's broken of just grabbing your money, taking it out of your life and out of your business, handing it over to someone else that's getting you paid a fee whether you make money or not, and that you're going to rely upon the market, because the study shows that since June of 1998 to today, adjusted for inflation, well, 3 weeks ago, okay, I'll get it accurate, adjusted for inflation, you know what the market's returned? 8.7% total. Not per year. Total adjusted for inflation. I'm not talking about the real inflation. I'm talking about what the government tells us inflation is. It's 8.7% appreciation. How's that going to get anyone where they want to go? So what do you do instead? I want to talk about the new rules for sustainable wealth. I want to talk about cash flow. And I want to talk about the 5-lever framework for creating economic independence in the next 3 to 7 years. And by the way, if you don't have a business, it's really hard to get there in 3 to 7 years. And the reason I say 3 to 7 is some people in this room might be starting from scratch right now. This is their first business they've just invested in. Some people are already making some money every single month. So it varies based upon the individual. Because your greatest asset isn't some stock, or it's not some bond, or it's not some piece of real estate. But your greatest asset is you. Your ability to be productive, your ability to create value, to serve others, to solve problems out there in the marketplace. That's the asset. And instead of putting your money into things that you don't know, you don't control, you don't understand, I mean, Jason kind of beat up on 401ks. Some people in here might love 401ks. I don't know. Anyone in here in love with the 401k, willing to admit it? Knowing what's about to come? I mean, can you imagine this as a business? Like, what if you had to pay, $3,500 to buy into a 401k? That's dirt cheap compared to what they really cost. But here's what the partnership looks like. Okay, you've just invited the government into your life at that point. Because did you know you don't, and by the way, we have Canadians in the room, right? RSPs, or we have any Australians in the room with super annuitizations. I mean, all these government qualified retirement plans is what I'm talking about. So if you put money into it, you no longer own that money. That's why you pay less tax this year. But there's something different than deferring tax and saving tax. So who thinks, by a show of hands, taxes might go up in the future? Just a show of hands. Okay. Who thinks taxes are going down in the near future? Show of hands. 0, I could see. 0. Okay. Who's in this room because they plan on being more successful in the future, by a show of hands? Right. Now, this is the first reason why I would never hire a certified financial planner, is because they tell you you're going to be in a lower tax bracket in the future. That is asinine. Who wants to have less money in the future? They tell you to live off 70% of your income. Why? So you can be a slave to 3 things. Number 1, if you retire with financial planning, you have to live off the interest that you accumulate off your assets, which means if interest rates are low, which they are pretty damn low, right? Your lifestyle's low. The second thing is, what if taxes go up like we talked about? That eats into your income. And number 3, anyone heard of this thing? I call it the bitch. It's called inflation, right? Inflation sucks because inflation stealthily robs you of your lifestyle on a yearly basis. And if we went back to 1981 when a 401k was created, if we asked people how much money they need to have for retirement, which is just a crazy notion, like we really know. I mean, in 1981, they didn't know that there was going to be Amazon. They didn't know that there was going to be cell phones. They didn't know everyone was going to have a computer. If you paid attention to financial planners in 1981, you wouldn't have any of those things, and there's homeless people with some of those things. I mean, talk about crappy planning, and I'm sorry for beating up on it so much. It's how I started in 1998, is I became a financial planner because I didn't want to sell life insurance. That seemed like I had to wear too short of a tie and I needed a bigger belly to sell life insurance, but that's what everyone was trying to get me to do. What happened is when I was 15 years old, I grew up in this small coal mining town called Price, Utah, all right? My great-grandfathers, all coal miners. Grandfathers, all coal miners. My dad, coal miner. So what I knew was coal mining. I actually took some of my friends to where I first grew up till 3rd grade, called East Carbon, Utah. If anyone knows East Carbon, they're probably worried that I have a knife in my back pocket or something right now. It was not the nicest area to live in, but it was a little coal mining town. And they didn't believe me that I grew up there. So I took them to my grandma's house, and they're like, holy shit, you actually grew up in this place, right? But when I was 15, I started my first business, totally innovatively named. You have no excuse not picking your product on Amazon, because I just said, Garrett Gunderson's Car Care. That was the name of the business. It took me a whopping 30 seconds to come up with the name, but the business was launched. And with that business, I won $5,000 for being the Young Entrepreneur of the Year for the state of Utah. Now, I'm a teenager winning this money. What do you think I want to do with it? Yeah, that's what you would think, but I guess I'm a nerd because I wanted to invest that money. Right? I'm like, I'm going to take this money, I'm going to invest it, but I wanted to get rich quick, of course. I was a teenager, right? So I started doing what I think a lot of people do with their finances. I started asking other people that I knew that had money where I should invest. And guess what they told me? The stock market, like investing has become synonymous with the stock market, but actually detailing cars, my first big contract was with a credit union, so I went to the president of the credit union and asked where I should invest the money. Anyone know where he told me to invest? Certificate of deposit. How exciting are certificates of deposit, by the way? Here's a simple thing. Everyone in the room know rule of 72? You just take whatever your interest rate is, divide it in 72, and it tells you how long it's going to take for your money to double. I did that simple math after I met with the president of the credit union, and I never talked to him again. Because I was like, what the hell are you talking about? That's like an eternity, right, to a kid that age. So I started asking other people. I asked my uncle, who was a VP for a big, company. So as an executive, he told me to invest in. If we go back in the 90s, guess what? Some of you will remember this company. I'm tipping you off when I say you'll remember the company. They actually controlled 87% of the internet traffic back then. Anyone heard of Novell? He told me to invest in Novell. Fortunately, my aunt pulled me aside. She's like, your Uncle Bill makes a lot of money as an executive, and then he pisses it away in the stock market. Maybe don't listen. So fortunately, I didn't. But what I found is everyone that I knew and everyone I talked to, they didn't own a business, and therefore, they weren't wildly successful. They were just successful compared to a kid that grew up in a coal mining town. You get that? And the statistics are this. 91% of people in the world that are worth more than $5 million, guess how they got there? A business. Being in control of their outcome, being able to influence what happens, knowing what's going on instead of handing their money over to companies that they have no idea. And here's why the stock market's an even worse idea the next 10 years than it was the last 15 years, is disruptive technologies. Disruptive technologies. We have companies right now that are being born inside of a garage or inside of the mind of someone that will be on the Fortune 500 in the next 10 years. You're going to see more Fortune 500 companies fall off of the Fortune 500 and die as a company because they're so antiquated and bureaucratic, because they're the types of companies where they're in the old economy. Like a taxi cab medallion in New York, that people pay $1 million for, and then Uber comes along and disrupts the hell out of that. It's just inevitable. The more bureaucracy, the more they have a stronghold and they think they have a monopoly, the more they're going to fail. And those people that are looking to have that become their secure retirement or their future are going to be sadly disappointed when that money starts to dissipate and go away. Because here's the great lie. When they tell you that the market's averaged 8 or 9% since 2000 BC, we all agreed with that, right? First of all, we haven't been around that long. So if you're going to be around for 100 years, then I guess you can go by their averages, But the bigger lie is, what if something in the Fortune 500 goes bankrupt? That happens, right? We know of companies that existed that don't exist anymore. They don't run that as a 0% return on that portion of your money for the rest of the time. They just throw another company in there and act like your money didn't go away. So your actual return's lower than what they publish as the average return. Does that make sense? The other thing is, imagine if you had $1,000 and you invested it, and it gets 100%, what does it grow to? This is not that tricky of a question. I think that if we can't do this math, I have to back up and start somewhere else. 1,000 at 100% grows to 2,000. I know you're like, this guy's going to trick me. I don't want to say anything out loud. The hell? You know, I think Jason probably does that to you. I'm much nicer, you know. So now you have 2,000, but what if in the second year you lose 50%? Back to your 1,000. Back to your 1,000. 1,000, you earn 100%, you go to 2,000. Second year you lose 50%, you're back to your 1,000. But what's the average rate of return? 100 minus 50 is a positive 50, divided by the number of years, which is 2, so you have a positive 25% rate of return. But in reality, what do you have? You have less than 1,000 because they took their fees for one thing. You know, they took their fees. They weren't kind and said, you know, we didn't really perform this year, so we're going to give these back to you. I mean, in 2001, financial stocks were going up while people's portfolios were going down because they have a great system built in for you to take the risk and them to get the return. Anyone ever heard high risk equals high return before? That is the craziest damn notion I've ever heard, you know? I think some people are really drunk on Wall Street trying to cook up an idea to sell something really bad, and they're like, how do we sell this? Well, let's say that high risk equals high return. Because the definition of risk is your chance of loss. Risk is chance of loss. And if high risk really equaled high return, we are in the right city for that, aren't we? I mean, they actually announce, hey, our slots pay out 97%. They're actually telling you, we make money off your money, because what do they have to do? Just provide ambiance and a few cocktails so that you'll bet even more, right? But high risk doesn't equal high return. As a matter of fact, that's why it's so instrumental that you guys have a business, and if you invest in things that you know, and you're investing in your education right now, and I want you to think, instead of accumulating for 30 years, start to create cash flow. So let's go over that framework right now. It's a 5-part framework. What I'm going to cover Friday is how to recover cash immediately. Money that's leaking to the government, it's leaking to the institutions, you're overpaying on interest because you're mismanaging credit, or all these areas that financial planners neglect to address because they don't get paid to address them because they get paid to manage money. But there's so many other things, like the type of corporation you choose as a business owner, how you pay yourself from that. We found 93% of businesses are overpaying on their taxes. 93%. Not because they missed some crazy tax nuance, it's because they weren't proactive with their taxes, or they didn't incorporate, or they're not paying themselves properly, or they didn't realize if they missed any deductions, they can go back 3 years. But the first piece is immediately recover cash, because imagine if, without having to work harder, without having to invest more, even today, if you had more cash to buy inventory or to drive traffic or whatever, because it was money that was leaving out of your pocket right now. That's the first way to create economic independence, is recover cash flow. Make sense? I'll give you a lot more on that on Friday, all right? So you can't skip my session just because you heard me today. Second is strategically engineer wealth. My company is called Wealth Factory. We believe that wealth is deliberately manufactured. It's not a guesswork game. It's not a game of luck, although you can become part of the lucky sperm club, some of you. You know, like if you're the heir to certain people, you know, like Donald Trump was part of the Lucky Sperm Club, other than with his hair, because basically his dad passed down a bunch of money to him, right? Now, he did good with keeping it and growing it, but strategically engineering wealth looks like this. First of all, you build a foundation that is impenetrable, because every single person in this room is going to face certain surprises over their lifetime. Some of those surprises are going to be financially, and for most people, they're going to be pretty devastating because we're not adequately prepared for them. But 90% of those surprises over your life don't have to be financially devastating if you strategically engineer wealth and build your foundation. So the first piece of building a foundation is you build up safety and liquidity. Instead of contributing to 401ks and IRAs and things that are completely locked away, you build up cash in an account that's available for a couple of reasons. What if the right opportunity comes along and you can buy inventory like crazy? It's nice if you have cash and you can act on it immediately. That has a rate of return. The second thing is, doesn't it feel good when you have cash in the bank, and if something goes wrong in the business, you're not financially devastated or having to borrow money? You can still focus on being productive instead of being reactive to a situation. Does that make sense? I look at this like, look, no matter how much luck, no matter how much discipline, no matter what rate of return, no matter what financial advisor, none of that matters if you can't conquer and adjust to one thing in life. Should I say that or move to the next point? Just checking if everyone's paying attention. Here's the thing. The greatest destroyer of wealth is something I call scarcity. Scarcity is the reason this room isn't 5 times larger right now, because some people were scared to invest in themselves when they had an opportunity to. Because just like when I grew up, they were told, you've got to go get a job, you've got to work for someone so that one day you can have a pension and you can retire. But we've seen that model been blown up, because who has a job for 30 years anymore and has everything promised to them come true? Yet there's a lot of people still holding tight to those beliefs. So that's scarcity. Scarcity is where when you read something in the newspaper, or if you turn on the news and it's not a story about a rescued dog or cat, it's the other 9 horrific stories, you go, oh, it's hopeless, the economy's horrible, I don't know what to do, Amazon's going to go under, like Jason said, because of some article or whatever it is. That's scarcity. On the other hand, I believe that there's this other kind of paradigm called abundance. And from that paradigm is where all prosperity lives and grows. Because people in scarcity find ways to make themselves right. When they say this won't work, they'll find a way to make something not work, right? That's too good to be true, it's unbelievable. They'll make sure that they prove themselves right, and they will continue to be stuck because they don't want to take responsibility for their financial future. They think it's scary. Look, I'll admit, finances is scary for most people. You want to know why? It's getting economically nude. It really sucks. You know, to like show people, everyone in this room probably feels like they should be further along than they are financially. Because of some financial mistake in the past, because of some issue that came up, or because they didn't have the foundation built, and when that surprise came along, it hurt them. We hear the statistics about the number of bankruptcies. We hear that the average person is not saving enough money. That is only partially true. People are saving money, but then they don't have things properly handled, so when a surprise comes up, it wipes them out. And it looks like they haven't saved any money. So this whole notion, when we turn on these financial figureheads that say, you know, I'll just name one, Susie Orman, her whole philosophy is, if you never spend another dollar for the rest of your life, you too can die just like Ebenezer Scrooge did if it wasn't for the 3 ghosts that came to visit him, right? I mean, it's like, have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live parody ever? It's like some guy calls in worth $20 million and he wants to go to Europe, and she's like, Europe's too expensive. You need to go to Key West. Well, he lives in Miami. He's like, well, you know, Key West. No. The dollar's so much stronger there. You can shrink your way to wealth. You're just never going to live wealthy. Saving your way rich is one of the worst ways to get there. I know, because that's how I started. It's amazing that I'm still married based upon that, by the way. Because the very first time I took my wife out to dinner and she ordered some wine, I was like, you know what? If we compounded that $7 for the next 47 years, that would be worth $2,211.23. And the look on her face was like, I've never been less attracted to you than right now. I mean, and I don't blame her. But look, I don't want you to be falling victim to that kind of philosophy, because a lot of these financial people don't understand who you are as a business owner. They just want to know how much money you're willing to put into an account that they get paid on. And what if you stop doing that for a while and you put all of it into you? It makes me think of the Walt and Roy Disney biography, where there was a letter during the Great Depression that Roy wrote to his parents. And he said, during this depression, I guess everyone's going to have to learn what Walt and I already did. That you should put your money in things that you understand. We're putting the bet into our studio. We're putting the bet into our vision. We're not going to fund everyone else's vision. And you know what? Look how that turned out. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, they could have put it in, you know, some stock, and it would have compounded, and if they never touched it and all this kind of stuff, it might be worth, you know, 8.7% total growth later. But I mean, you get it? Like, I just read the book Money by Tony Robbins because so many people asked me about it, so I'm like, okay, I'll read all 650 damn pages. I could have read it, and we could have said it in 200, but he's pretty bombastic, and, you know, same way on stage, same way in a book. There's some great things in the book, but here's the one lesson that is totally missing. He's interviewing all these billionaires throughout the book, okay? And every billionaire is telling you how you should manage your money. And here's the billionaires. Charles Schwab. You know what Charles Schwab tells everyone to do? Put your money in discount brokerages. How do you think he made his money? Did he make money putting his money in a discount brokerage or inventing the discount brokerage? Right? Or then they ask, you know, Vogel, what do you should? Oh, you should buy index funds. Oh yeah, guess what? He made his money inventing index funds, not putting his money in index funds. So no matter what you hear about saving money and dollar cost averaging and you're in it for the long haul and the market's on sale and all the kind of nonsense that's shoved down our throat, the real wealth in this world is made by business owners who are willing to have a vision, they're bold enough to invest in themselves, and that's how you get your returns. All right? Look, I could have been a pretty damn good life insurance salesman, you know, and I could have made some money doing that and get all the renewals and all the kind of stuff, but I had this vision that people that were not worth $50 million should be paid attention to, because the best financial advice in the world comes from family services firms. Family services firms help people worth 50 million or 100 million or more, and when you walk into one of their firms in New York City, there's attorneys, accountants, cash flow specialists, investment advisors, fiduciaries, all sitting around the table to make sure to do the proper due diligence that people make good decisions and they don't lose their money, and that they're making sure that they understand the fee structures and all this kind of stuff. But, you know, if we go into the working wealthy, the people who are making money but they're not worth 50 million or more, the people who are owning businesses but they're investing it back into their business, that area is neglected. That area is taught by mutual fund salesmen and life insurance salesmen, and that's why that realm is so dangerous, because instead of putting money into yourself and your practice or into your business, you know, it's being siphoned off prematurely. And you know what they say, like, you know how everyone's taught to diversify? Like, you've heard diversify, right? Diversify, diversify, diversify. By the way, that's them admitting they don't know what they're doing. It's like, I don't know, buy some of this and some of that, and hopefully one of them's up if the other one's down. Like, that's the admission of guilt. And unfortunately, the thing that kills business owners the most is to prematurely diversify away from their business into things they don't know or understand. And if we add the name premature before anything, I think it's always bad. Like premature birth, right? Like that's what you guys were thinking, right? Right. I don't know what else, yeah, but you know, premature, yeah. So, but don't rob money from your business that you can do something with, to put it in locked away accounts that's probably going to be taxed at a higher rate, have a bunch of fees come out, have the market disappoint you, and unfortunately if the market goes down, have it create scarcity in your life. Have you ever had the market go down and you feel bad about yourself because you took your hard-earned money and you put it in there and you didn't have much control over it? So when I'm talking about strategically engineering wealth, I'm talking about building your foundation where it's solid, it's completely solidified, you've got your asset protection in place, you've got your liquid savings, you've invested in your business, that's your foundation. And I'll talk more about how to build strategically engineer wealth and some of those steps on Friday. But let's go to the third thing. So we've talked about recover cash flow, strategically engineer wealth. So we're on number 3 of 5, which is to accelerate investment income. Accelerate investment income. First of all, one of your assignments, I'm not really assigning this to you, but just, you know, just something to pay attention to, is find these people that are really rich because of compound interest. Have you ever seen compound interest over 10 years, by the way? It's like, oh yeah, it's kind of gone up. It's always 30 years. And then when it's 30 years, oh, if you just wait 10 more years, then it really gets growing, right? So be careful with that kind of thinking, and instead, accelerate investment income, find ways to provide cash flow. Because cash flow can create more economic independence, and if you can create economic independence, then you can swing for the fences in your business, knowing that you're not going to harm you or your family financially. Does that make sense? And part of accelerating your investment income is you establish your investment philosophy, because if you don't have one, someone else is going to sell you theirs. What type of investments make sense for you and which ones don't? I believe in investor DNA, that we all have our own unique investor DNA. I call it strengths vesting. Only invest in things that you know or understand. If you invest in things that you don't know or understand, you've increased your risk, and by inviting more risk, you have a higher likelihood of losing. So invest in what you know. The good news there is you focus, you don't diversify. You invest all your eggs in one basket and you insure that basket well. I know everyone else says, you know, you want to have a whole bunch of different eggs in the basket, but then you don't know if they're falling off or if they're breaking or what's going on with them. Invest all your eggs in one basket and insure them well, because that's what creates multimillionaires. Not diversification, but focus. Focus and then protect the hell out of it. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Anyone want to fight me on that? So in strategically engineering wealth and then accelerating investment income, you look at investments, and this is one of the most interesting exercises. We'll have people write down every loan that they have, and they'll divide that loan by a minimum monthly payment, and it spits out a number. If it's a really low number, what it says is that the bank or institution is requiring a pretty high payment in relationship to a pretty low balance. But then we'll have them take their investments. And with their investments, we'll find out if they divide their investments by what they're getting on a monthly basis, that number is, the number comes out to be a lot higher, which means it's really low compared to the amount invested. So what if you learn to think like the bank or the institution, cut out the middleman, and start making a whole lot more money? I'm not going over time, Jason, right? Sweet. Front row seat. Look at this. I mean, this is awesome. But we do this in our wealth acceleration workshops and our wealth acceleration program. People will invest $3,000 and then we'll actually unveil and show them, here's the rules you've been playing by and where you're losing money, and here's the rules that you can play by. Rig the game in your favor, start earning the interest instead of paying it to someone else. So now, hey, if I could pay 10%, but I'm the one that captures it and it's tax deductible, I'll pay myself 10% rather than pay the bank 5%, because now I've created a company where I'm the bank. You know, we want people to think that way, that you can now have access to that money to invest back into your business. But part of it is, if I went and asked everyone about investing, most people think accumulation versus acceleration. Because if you're a financial institution, what do you want from people? Okay, this is the participation part. This is not the theoretical, rhetorical part. So you want their money. How often do you want it? All the time. And how much, how long do you want to hold on to it for? Forever. And then how much do you want to give back to someone that wants to withdraw? Now you know exactly what you've been doing all your life with the financial institutions. That's their entire agenda. Now, what if instead of falling prey to their agenda, you were deliberate about your agenda, and you said, what can I do to start creating cash flow instead of accumulate, and start to get my money to work for me rather than let it continue with them? You could still utilize them, but you start getting your money in motion, you start doing that, and all of a sudden you can earn it more times. So let me say it this way. Everyone in here has heard of the GDP, right? It's the output for the country. If we divide that by our money supply, that gives us a number called velocity. So velocity is how many times is our money turning? Because, in the world of abundance, I don't see money as a finite thing. I see it as how many times can we get it to circulate? Because exchange creates wealth. So the more money exchanges, the more wealth that's created. That's why it's asinine that when we hit a recession, which most people don't know there's a recession until they watch the news, and they're like, oh my God, we're in a recession. They didn't know until they watched the news, so then they start calling everyone they know, talking about the recession instead of talking about a vision, instead of being productive, instead of focusing on their business. And they get so caught up in that in a frenzy, then they bring on the economist who knows everything and is going to solve our problems. And this was the first economist I saw on TV in 2008. You know what their advice was? Stop eating out. Stop eating out. I'm like, well, holy hell, that's going to cure the recession? We stop exchanging with one another. We just hunker down and then we forget, okay, we hope we make it through. See, our vision dictates our value. Our vision dictates our value. So if our vision is the one of survival, that's the best outcome that we're going to have. And that's one of scarcity, and that's why it destroys wealth. But on the other hand, if we look at just two companies, one company who the Surgeon General just said their food is not even edible for human consumption, yet it's the biggest company in fast food called McDonald's. Okay, so McDonald's has a horrible menu for the most part. I don't think there's a lot of people that like eating their food, pink sludge and all that, good stuff. So they, at one time, were only twice the size of Burger King. Do you know how much bigger they are than Burger King now? They're like 51% of the market. Burger King's less than 3%. You know the line of demarcation, you know where that all changed for them? Was a major recession hit. Burger King's vision was this: we're just going to make it through, we're going to hunker down, we're going to tighten the belt, and we just got to survive. And they did. McDonald's said, you know what? They did the same thing Apple does, and everyone criticizes that Apple has so much cash on hand. But what they did is they said, we're going to increase our marketing and advertising. We're going to become more visible. We're in the real estate business. We're going to buy more real estate because it's going to go on sale. And you know what happened? They freaking exploded, because in times that are difficult, it's the leaders that win. And everything that you learn over the next few days, if you apply that and you say, instead of funding my retirement plan is going to be my business, and you start putting the money towards that, you're going to increase your production. It's not about shrinking your way to wealth, it's about producing your way to wealth. It's about value creation, it's about vision. And you know who had this is pretty profound vision. If we go back to 1961, JFK comes up onto the TV. There was 3 full channels, so he was on all 3 channels. And he says, we're going to fly a man to the moon and return them safely home within this decade. You know what? Before he said that, this is what NASA's goal was. We want to be the world's best space program. How do you measure whether you're the world's best space program? The uniforms, the IQ of the scientists? How do you measure? He said, you know what, we're going to fly someone to the moon and land them safely within this decade. They didn't even know how the hell they were going to do that, by the way. They didn't have the technology invented. They didn't have everything budgeted out for it. But you know what? Everyone showed up to NASA the next day completely different. And JFK died, and we still were able to accomplish that. Fly someone to the moon and safely return them home. What is your moonshot with your business? What is your vision that's so compelling it's not just about going from $50,000 or just starting off the ground and getting to $50,000 a month or getting to $250,000 a month, but what is it that would be the end result for the customer? Because the 4th piece is to scale your business revenue. This is how you create economic independence. And I'll tell you, this is what we're up to. We're up to 1 million entrepreneurs becoming economically independent by January 1st, 2020. That's what we're up to. That's what I show up here for. That's why I move flights. That's why my wife says, okay, yeah, you haven't been home since Cayman, but by the way, I flew her out to Vegas and the kids, and we did all the kid stuff and all that kind of thing. But, and I'm back here Friday. I'm flying home today. So, had a meeting with Forbes. I didn't think that was a good one to cancel. So, and I didn't know if I could convince him to meet me in Vegas. But I saw today as an opportunity to get more business owners economically independent, to light a fire for you to listen to what you're being taught here and go full force. Invest in yourself. Build the foundation. Hell, cash in your investments if you have to, because at least you have control over this outcome. But some people are going to get in scarcity because they're like, well, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What will people think of me? Well, I'm going to tell you, if you just keep doing what you're doing, the next 10 years is going to be an awful rough ride if you're counting on retirement plans. You'll be part of that 2% to 8% that ends up going, crap, I'm still not economically independent even though I sacrificed, even though I saved, even though I followed what everyone told me. That's why we do a wealth acceleration program. That's why we have such a low invitation at $3,000 to make sure that we can make that impact on a big scale and we have people in the room that have been to that event and that are coming to the next ones. I want to make sure you know what a financial architecture is. I want to make sure that you don't have any surprises that deflate you or that derail you from what you're up to. I want to make sure that you transfer your risk, that you know very clearly what to do when it comes to your finances. It's not guesswork, but you have a list and you go, yeah, I'm now aware of where I'm set and where I'm not set. And then you have a strategic plan without someone trying to peddle some product or some investment, but instead you go, okay, this is what it's going to take, and I want you to get in 1 year where people never get in 30 years, which is a financial foundation that's solid so you can focus on what matters most. And then second, get somewhere in 3 to 7 years that people usually don't get in 30 years, which is economic independence, so you can go out there and kick some ass. That's what I'm up to. That's why I'm here today. And I'm not handing out any forms or anything like that. I'm just here to hopefully charge you up in a way that sustainable wealth and cash flow can be created. And number 5 on the 5 levers, because we've talked about recovering cash flow, strategically engineering wealth, accelerating your investment income and turning your investments into cash flow. We've talked about scaling business revenue by having a moonshot, by having a vision, by having the highest leverage points. I listened in the hall as Jason talked to 5 people, and it was all about scaling business revenue so you can have a greater impact without greater effort. By doing something, by finding what it is that is his stupid human trick, meaning that no one else can do it at that level, and surrounding himself with the best people in the world so that he can go out there and make a bigger impact, which will be a lot more dollars in his pocket, and there's no other investment you're going to be able to put your money into to get that kind of return. But the 5th piece, and this is where I think is most unique when it comes to the world of finance, is to make it count. Make it count. This whole notion of retirement is stupid, of thinking that you should sacrifice for 30 years so that one day you can go live on the beach. My liver would give out if I drank that many Coronas and threw rocks, and I'd get bored after a week. If you want to die quickly, you lose three things: money, purpose, and relationships. But if you continue to build those over your lifetime, why would you ever leave a business if you can build it properly? If it doesn't require your involvement every single day, you retire in that business so you still have a tax deduction. So that if the economy changes, you have control over what you do. You can be more involved. And you're not a slave to whatever the interest rates are in some investment plan. That's the difference. That's the opportunity that's ahead of you. Don't get disrupted like the rest of the people that are asleep handing their money over to financial firms and continue to hear about, oh, there was this hidden fee, and then the market went down, but it's going to rally, it's on sale, and all the reasons I got kicked off CNBC, I'm damn glad I got kicked off that damn thing, you know? I mean, every commercial shows these people in like some crazy, exotic, great place, living this great life, and I'm just not seeing the retirees living like that. As a matter of fact, we had someone years ago that had $1 million home paid for and $1.5 million in the retirement plan, and they were eating 2 meals a day because they were afraid of running out of money. I mean, who's excited about that? Don't experience life along the way, just wait till one day. I mean, I remember I was in this, remember the old Chrysler New Yorker used to talk to you and stuff? Anyone been in that car? I remember in Price, Utah on Main Street, sitting next to my dad in that car with its fake leather and the computer telling me a door's ajar if you opened it, you know? All that kind of thing. And I'm telling my dad, I'm going to work harder than anyone else is willing to work so I can live a life in the future no one else is willing to live, you know, will be able to live. And he said, I see your thinking and I appreciate your work ethic. Because that's one thing coal miners will teach you is work ethic. He says, but that hasn't worked out the best for me. He says, what about all the memories that you never have and the experiences that you miss out on? And so if you don't handle your finances, you're going to have more stress and less opportunity. If you don't plug the leaks, if you don't get clear about what you're doing and you choose not to invest and grow the business, then you're going to have pretty predictable results because it's been pretty much what they've been to this point, right? So the lesson I took from that with my dad was I have to be my best asset. I have to take care of myself. I have to make sure to take some time off along the way, have little mini retreats, mini vacations, and then go back to work because, you know, I took 2 weeks off during the Christmas time, and that was like, by the second week, I learned about this Netflix thing, and it totally destroyed the hell out of my life, you know? I mean, I binged all 4 seasons of Homeland. Oh my God. I started eating and gaining weight because it was like fudge and a bunch of stuff, and I was so utterly depressed because I wasn't engaged in something that mattered for a moment. But it was a good contrast for me to say, I love life when I'm showing up and making an impact in something that I love to do. And I'm a financial nerd, and I want to make it simple for everyone so they know what to do, and they can cut through the BS. 80% of what you think you need to know, you don't need to know. If you focus on that 20%, it's the Pareto analysis. You get 80% of the result. And then you continue to build something that matters to you in a way that matters to you most. So recover cash flow, strategically engineer wealth, accelerate your investment income, scale that business revenue, and make it count so your financial scorecard isn't just about dots on a piece of paper, but the experiences that you have along the way, and that absolutely can change your family's destiny and make life worth living. So thanks for letting me spend some time with you.
Well done. Well done.
Good stuff.
Is Phil Jeffson, are you in the room? Phil? Not in the room. So Phil signed up, I believe, for ASM2, and Phil was with us in the Cayman Islands, Garrett and I didn't know Phil's story. So he signed up through Rapid Crush, which was the smartest thing up until this point in his life he's ever done, right? But in order for him to sign up, Phil had to dip into his 401k, right? And me, the dirty marketer that I am, the shark with the blood in the water, I had the audacity to tell him that was a good idea. Or, you know, I didn't tell him directly, but I told people, hey, if you got to dip into these savings that are doing nothing for you and invest them over here, do it. You know, that wasn't a very popular position to take, and I got my ass chewed a lot by a lot of different customers who had good intentions, saying, I can't believe you would recommend something so reckless and so selfish, right? So Phil Jeffson had took that in there, and he made a deal with his wife. He says, well, this money is set aside for our kids' college, so we better damn well make more than this to pay for the kids' college, right? And last I knew, and I know the number isn't accurate, and I wish he was in here right now, is $70,000 or $100,000 a month that his business is doing, right? Pretty damn good, right? Pretty damn good. So one of the reasons I kind of brought Garrett up here is because there are various levels of success I've seen in ASM. Obviously with ASM4, most of you, I know where you're at, right? It's not where you want to be at, but it's where you're at. It's reality. You wanted to have a product up by now. You wanted to be selling it like crazy, and you wanted to already have a second and third product up, but you're most likely just getting your product live, and you haven't started doing promotion yet, right? Or you're almost getting your product live. There's some of you who haven't even got your product live yet because you're so scared to make a wrong decision, right? It is your fault, but I mean, you've been kind of set up that way. Well, you have been, okay? You go to school and they say, here are in green all the things you got right on the test, right? Wait, no. Here in red is all the things you got wrong. You're not rewarded for what you get right. You're only punished for what you get wrong, and then you carry that, and your parents, they do the same thing to you most likely, right? You carry all that with you, and then you get into this phase where you're like, oh my God, now I'm in ASM, and God forbid I picked the wrong supplier, right? Or God forbid my product doesn't sell 1 billion units as soon as I put it online, right? You get a little scared, okay? So some of you are in that position. I'm going to talk a lot more about that in the main ASM event. Some of you here are from ASM 1, 2, or 3. There's several people in this very room that I know that are doing over $100,000 a month in ASM, right? One of the reasons I brought Garrett up here today is because I know with Garrett, like Garrett's getting me into private banking. So you know how he was just railing on the banks? Private banking, which is normally not available until you reach $50 million in net worth, Garrett has worked a deal because it's his life to get guys like me and other people that are coming up in their business that could eventually be the 50 million. He says to these guys, he says, hey, you should start working with them in advance. Otherwise, you'll just have to hope they come to you when the time is right, right? So he's getting us into private banking, and I told Garrett, I said, I have several customers, ASM customers, who've now made more money in their life than they've ever made before. And that's true. And the reason why we push ASM so damn hard, and we do push very hard, right, is because I've never seen another opportunity, including anyone I've ever created, myself, that has produced such dramatic results, right? And so I know I can feed these people to Garrett and get paid to do so, of course, too, right? And he will be able to set these people up. He'll save them on average with the clients that he works that are over a certain success point. I think it's $250,000 a year in their business. He saves them on average, I believe, $4,000 a month in their business just in money that you could get but choose not to, with no extra effort, right? So I wanted to bring him up here today, not just for the hype and the jazz and get you all excited and pumped up, because, you know, that stuff wears off very quickly when you get back into the real world, right? I wanted you to kind of realign your thinking to focusing not just on the day-to-day, but on the bigger picture and what's available. And this is only available with ASM. Many of you are successful. I want to take the people who are successful, do this with you, and then show everybody else. This is the model. This is an extra incentive for you to push forward when there's challenges in your ASM business. Does that make sense? Pretty good stuff, right? All right, so here's the deal. We're going to break for lunch here very quickly. You must be back at 1 o'clock p.m. I got a full 90 minutes for you on traffic, okay? I'll be back here. If you want to register before you get back with the main ASM, it's 4001. I believe it's just right next door, right? So you can register in the meantime. Take your lunch. Be back here. I start at 1, even if there's nobody in the room, okay? So I'll see you very, very shortly.